Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio, coming to you on this lovely New Jersey spring day from Bloom Audio's backyard, more or less. So today we've got the Kublai Khan from Noble Audio. The Kublai Khan is sort of descended from the Noble Khan more so than the Sultan. Khan was Noble's flagship IEM before Sultan. Now, Kublai Khan isn't a hybrid, it's not a tribrid, it's some kind of crazy four-driver chimera with bone conduction, piezo, balanced armature, and dynamic drivers all mixed in there. So, with all this different tech in there, does Kublai Khan create something great with a really cohesive sound? Let's take a closer look. So, here we have Kublai Khan. You can see the design here, the dragon on the ear cup. These are a little bit on the larger side as IEMs go. Again, there's a whole ton of drivers in there, which is going to have some effect on that. So from a fit perspective, this is probably not a great pick for a first-time IEM listener, just getting used to the fit of a larger IEM with fairly deep nozzles in there. So if you've noticed, those familiar with Noble will recognize the Noble 8-core cable. This is standard on a lot of their higher-end IEMs. Aesthetically, it's not quite up there with some of the, top-end looks you get on cables, but it's a very practical cable that really does the job well. I've always been a big fan of the 8-core cable. Also in the package, now, again, this is a demo package, so the only case we got was this classic Pelican. However, the real retail package comes with like a bomb-proof box, bomb-proof like Pelican case, and then a smaller leather travel case, much like the Noble Sultan did. You also get some little stuff like a carabiner, a cleaning tool, and a pretty large selection of ear tips, including multiple silicone options and some foam tips. But altogether, you get a great package. And again, it's a really nice looking IEM with a, very somewhat subtle, but still very cool design. Again, making a gold dragon on your IEM look subtle is really deserves an award onto itself. But yeah, great package and a great design here on the Kublai Khan. If you're anything like me, you might have seen the bone conduction and piezo driver and thought, oh, this must be some kind of hybrid of Empire Ears Legend Evo's incredible bass with the Khan's legendary treble. And while you're not too far off, that's also not entirely right. Probably the most notable aspect of Kublai Khan is the imaging and the treble performance. You get very holographic imaging with a great soundstage with width and depth. And a lot of that does come from having this treble with a great extension and just a really great balance as well, where you get a treble that is smooth, but not too smooth, and that has great extension, but not extension in fatiguing or presence in fatiguing frequencies there. The mids are thick and weighty and just add that weight and realism to the imaging, where each instrument, as you're placing it in the 3D image, each instrument has just that really solid concrete feel to it. There's also a very natural timbre. Vocals and other instruments that live in the mid-range, like guitars and pianos, just really have a great clear delivery and just loads of detail. The bass is interesting. So yeah, you have this bone conduction driver that gives you this immense deep extension that goes way down. And you've got the dynamic driver, which is, again, it's well tuned to give you some good impact, some feelings of dynamics. But in the actual tuning, the bass is definitely not emphasized. There's not any sort of, bass head sort of emphasis you might expect in the low end, considering that you've got that bone conduction, tuned to give you that deep extension. Take away the piezo, turn the bass up a little bit, and you could have some kind of Legend Evo-like brain-shaking bass monster. But as it stands, what you get is just a really well-balanced, sort of an all-star team performance between the piezo and the treble, the great job with the balanced armatures in the mid, and the dynamic and bone conduction handling the bass, all in an expert fashion. In our written review of Kublai Khan, we did some comparison with Noble Sultan and also with Empire Ears Odin. You can check that out over at bloomaudio.com. We'll have a link in the description. But for the video, we wanted to highlight some of the other IEMs that Noble has released alongside of Kublai Khan and provide some info in comparison there. So of course, at the top, we've got the Kublai Khan, which does have that just great performance across the board in all frequencies, but largely the end result is something with a more neutral sound, a strong focusing on the 3D image, on spatial characteristics and imaging. So next in line is Kadence. Kadence gets a lot of that same sort of focus on the spatial characteristics, really incredible resolution from Kadence. Kadence is an 8-driver balanced armature. So it sort of gives you shades of maybe the U12T from 64 Audio, maybe a little bit of the Campfire Andromeda, where it does have this strong detail and somewhat of a neutral sound, but also just a little bit of sweetness to the tuning that it doesn't feel boring. It doesn't feel like a reference sound. It feels engaging, but while providing this sort of reference level detail and resolution. Next up in the lineup is Jade. So Jade is a 5-driver hybrid. And if you're familiar with Noble's other hybrids in this range, Jade is sort of somewhere in between. So you have the Tux 5, which is also a 5-driver hybrid, 1 dynamic and 4 balanced armatures. Now Tux 5 had a really exaggerated kind of bass head tuning, really strong bass with sort of a U shape, a little bit of treble on top, but heavily scooped out in the middle. Then there was also the Noble Zephyr, which was a 3-driver hybrid. It was sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum. That was much more neutral. Had a lot of linear feeling to it when you would listen to it, as opposed to the scooped out mids of Tux 5, you got stronger mids. So Jade hits somewhere in between, where there's a bit of fun to it. It does have a little extra impact, a little extra emphasis in the bass, maybe a very soft V, but it still does have good mid-range presence and a little bit more of a reference-like delivery than Tux 5 does, while being a little more fun than Zephyr was. And then finally, there's DXII. So DXII hits at $599, and this is a single driver dynamic IEM that hits with sort of maybe a W-shaped tuning. It reminds me a little bit of the Campfire Audio Vega or Atlas, which had these really big bass in a single driver dynamic. And this does have pretty big bass, but this gets the mids and the treble more involved as well. And it is a really interesting tuning. It's almost like someone tried to recreate Noble Sultan, but in a single dynamic driver IEM. So you're not going to get really strong technical performance out of this one. And there's some weaknesses maybe in the timbre, but what you do get is a great tuning, and some really good aspects, good soundstage, among other things at the price. So if you're looking for something that's actually pretty well balanced with some strong low-end presence in this $500 range, DXII does really well for that. There's a clear lineage in this sort of line of succession in noble IEMs that kind of stopped at the Sultan, where you had the Katana, the Kaiser, the Khan, which all kind of built on each other. And the Sultan was really its own animal when you look at it in that lineup. Kublai Khan comes in as more of a successor and heir to the Khan. And what Kublai Khan really does well and evolves in that lineup, I think, is the overall tuning, where you do get stronger mids than Khan, and you also get a treble that feels like it does everything that Khan's treble did from a technical perspective, but with a little less tendency to fatigue, where I felt Khan was always just on the edge of having a little too much treble. Kublai Khan really nails it and dials it in a little bit. So while Kublai Khan isn't the bass monster you might have guessed it could be based on the specs, its reference detail and incredible technical capabilities really does place it alongside Sultan as a true flagship IEM and an heir to the noble throne. Thanks for watching. You can check out Kublai Khan, the rest of Noble's lineup, and a lot of other great products at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.